Hey, what is up, guys? I am Hippie, and I hope you've been enjoying the Spook-Tacular so far. We're already up to day 3. We got another spooky story for you guys today. Another one from my mom. Because you see, back in the 70s, things were nuts. That's all I'm going to say. Go ahead. It was crazy.
So most parents tell their children stories like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, but not my mother. I think you can tell by now that my mother just was quite a character. So when we were little and we were out in the country, there actually was an escaped inmate that escaped from the mental hospital. His last name was Bussy, and believe it or not, he lived on Bussy Road. And something had happened. We do not know what the story was when he was younger. He had escaped. They knew he was in the area. They were telling everybody.
How far from your area, would you say?
Well, let me get the story. They were telling everybody in the area to leave their guns, but take their ammo and come to the shelter. And we were extremely close. We lived on Heron Road, which went straight up in between two main roads for miles and miles. But up off of Heron Road, about a quarter mile from our house, was Bussy Road. And every time we would go to school, we would go to this old abandoned house that was a bus stop for all the other kids in the area, and it was just really, they said it was haunted, something bad had happened, and we hadn't lived there very long, maybe 4 or 5 years, and evidently when this Bussy guy, I can't remember what his first name was, when he had lived there.
Gary Bussy.
No, it is not Gary Busey. But anyway.
He's crazy.
We would go by it and it just gave us this eerie feeling. The frame of the house was there. You could see weeds growing inside. It was all boarded up. And this guy, we have no idea what his mentality was at the time, but they assumed that's where he was going. And so my mom, we decided to stay in the house, lock everything down, load all of our guns. Like I said, we lived in the country. We hunted. My brother and my father and everybody was really familiar with firearms, so we weren't too afraid. This was just one crazy lunatic person. So while we got all the lights down low, my mom decides to tell us a story about a family that she had known, Joe and Dallas. I don't want to give their last name. They are deceased now, but they do have family members, and their grandchildren are still alive. They're as old as I am. And they lived in Alpena at the time, which was about 30 miles from Huron, where we lived. And they were talking about their daughter and son-in-law, and their children just happened to be over at Grandma and Grandpa's. And it was the middle of the night, and they were sleeping, and they heard some noise downstairs. And so the husband went downstairs, and the wife heard him screaming and yelling and call the police and call the police. And the husband just had like his boxers on. The wife went downstairs to see what was going on. And there was another young kid. I don't know who he was, but he had butcher knives, had broken into their house, completely stark, raving naked, and was stabbing her husband. Now, this is a small town.
Through the hands and stuff, right? He was holding up his hands to try and block the knife. They figured he was stabbed 20-something times. It is a very good thing that this was a large guy. They hadn't hit any major organs after the ordeal. The wife also tried pulling him off. I mean, her husband was covered in blood. And this guy, I don't know how to say this politely, though. Okay, I'll say it if you don't know how to say it politely. So this guy's a skinny dude, right? The guy that broke in. And the guy that he's stabbing is a large dude, right? Like a big guy. And, of course, his hands are all stabbed up and his hands are all bloody and slippery, so he can't get a hold on him. So he sits on the guy, right? And when you got a lot of weight on your stomach, you start doing things out the butt.
He shit all over their house. The wife ended up with stab marks to her hands and everything. They finally called the cops, got them in. They are lucky. She had about 15 stab wounds to her arms and hands. And like I said, numerous to her husband. They ended up in the hospital for months. It was pretty bad damage to their hands that they ended up being able to file for disability. They could not work. Their muscles just did not work right after. But
I remember my mother saying that when they were called to the scene after, her friends were saying it looked like someone was slaughtered in there, and they're lucky their grandchildren weren't in at the time, and they had no people that would come in at this time in the 1970s.
No hazmat, no cleanup team.
And so they had to go in there and clean all their children, you know, their daughter and son-in-law's blood and this shit all over the house. She said it was the most terrible scene she had ever seen. She said she just couldn't get the blood out of the carpet and the walls. And this town we come from had not had a murder. It did have crime, but it had not had a murder in 25 years. So to think that if these people hadn't woken up, or if he had made it to their bedroom, and they had no idea why this kid went in there and did it. They don't know if he was drunk or high. He never gave a reason why this happened. So my mother told us this story.
As an escaped crazy person was on the loose in your area.
And we were about, I would say between 9 and 11 I was. And I had 2 older brothers that were 2 years older than me. Then the other one was 4. And then I had 2 brothers that were 2 years younger than me and 2 years younger under that. So if I were, let's say, 9, she was telling this to a 4 or 5-year-old, a 6 or 7-year-old. I was, like I said, 8 or 9. And then a 10 or 11. And then my handicapped brother who was blind, telling the story about this crazy guy that broke in with butcher knives and almost slaughtered 2 members of family and friends that we knew. So bringing us back to this, we kids were like, if you were at Camp Blood or whatever, where you're sitting around, your counselors are telling you you're out in the middle of these woods that you have no idea, all the lights are off, and they're telling you about people that come by and murder people. But the conclusion to the story was this bussy guy was caught in that house, a quarter mile down our road from our house. I would say within a couple of hours after she was telling the story. So they did have it right. He, for some reason, had the goal that he needed to go home. And to this day, as far as I know, that house is still standing. Whatever happened to that teenage boy that broke in and tried to kill our friends' children, we have no idea. Whatever happened to the bussy guy, to this day, we have no idea either. But parents, if an escaped lunatic or axe murderer or whatever escapes, don't sit your children down in the dark, lock the doors, put guns all around, and tell them a story about how some people were almost killed. Please stick to Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk. Like I said, to this day, I tell my kids these stories that my mom used to tell me, and they look at me and like, can't believe me. Yes, my mother is a certain type of person. We won't go any further than that, and I will turn this over to Hippie.
And he was naked. So I hope you guys have been enjoying these. We're going to have another one for you guys tomorrow. Might be a little bit of a different one, though. I might have Fat Man with us tomorrow.
And we're going to tell you about some of the ghost histories from our town.
Some of the ghost histories. All the histories of our town. So, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.